Good evening, all. It is Carl Murray here, and this is EDML 8429, our second session. I'm glad you could join us for tonight's session. It is 6 o'clock, so let me see, I've started the recording. Before I get into tonight's session, I just want to check, are there any questions, any general things you need to ask me? Anything you need to know? I know many of you didn't make the orientation session, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to listen to that video. Anything you want to ask me before we start with tonight's class specifically? Okay, great stuff. Hopefully you won't be as quiet for the rest of the evening, and we'll have a little bit of an interactive session. So tonight I'm going to speak to Learning Unit 2, Theme 1. Which is discussing the challenges faced by higher education institutions in South Africa. This is one of the possible, and I don't want to get to the assignment just yet, but this is one of the topics that plays a role within the first assignment that you could possibly do. So let's have a look at the challenges, but I want to look at the challenges firstly from a perspective of what is the expectation if one looks at the various legislations as you have been prescribed. What are the requirements of tertiary institutions in South Africa according to those legislations, policy frameworks, etc. So firstly, your tertiary educational institutions need to reflect your society, and as such they should build a fair, equitable, non-racist, non-sexist, and democratic South Africa. So tertiary education institutions have this obligation to make sure that the way in which they operated meets those criteria, that there is no discrimination, and it reflects the principles of a democratic South Africa. Secondly, we should have a single coordinated post-school education and training system. In other words, when a student leaves school, they should comfortably can move from one part of higher education or post-school education, if you prefer, and those terms themselves are contentious. Post-school education and higher education, there are people that will argue that post-school education and higher education are two different things. So a TVET, for example, is post-school education, people would argue. Others would argue TVET is a training system. And then when people talk about higher educations, they would say that is tertiary education. In other words, university education. Do we see any problem in that? Does anybody see a problem in that as such? Bain, please speak.
Yeah, so how I see it is obviously a technical qualification. So I come from a family where my brother did a technical thing for 1 year and he earns way more money than I do, who did a four-year degree. I think it's a little bit not a true reflection of South Africa. There's different skill levels and different ways in which we use our skills. So it's quite hard to put a cap on what you deem a skill and what you deem as knowledge, considering we're so service industry based. I mean, I'm a graphic designer, so I feel like I am a service person. So I feel like the levels are not really matching to what we expect them to be in a perfect world, South Africa. I have quotation marks in the air. That's just my opinion.
Yes, I hear you. I tend to agree with you. But in itself, in what you have said there, that means that we don't have a single coordinated post-school education and training system, because we see these as two separate systems. And yes, myself with my couple of degrees and my very high education level, thinking back at it, I probably would have done better as a plumber, at least money-wise for sure. And I think many of us that's in the education field feel the same. But then again, you don't go into education to make money. There isn't money in education. The next point is the expanded access, improving quality, and increased diversity of provision. Yeah, it doesn't help much if one keeps on speaking and you don't remember to switch on your mic. Any case, so if we look at expanded access, improved quality, increased diversity of provision, it means that we need to give more people places. Those people that exit our post-school, higher education, whatever you want to call it, needs to be better. And then we need to have an increased diversity of provision. In other words, we have, if you look at the traditional university degrees, BA, BCom, engineering, and then I'll put education with that in terms of training teachers. We need to have a wider diversity. And yes, I know you can throw it at me that I have a cousin twice removed who has a doctor's degree in the cello. But if you look at the percentage of people that have this increased diversity of provision, it's very little, and mobility is not easily achieved between degrees. Further, what is expected of us? A stronger and more cooperative relationship between education training institutions and the workplace. And I'd like to throw this question out there. Do you believe that the students, those of you that work with students on a daily basis, are they really being trained to be able to go into the workplace? Are the skills that you are providing them those skills that they need in the workplace? Please let me know what you think. Cecile?
Hi, sir. Yes. So I teach
Please,
at
please, it's
Newbridge.
Coral. It's Coral, not
Cor-
sir, please.
Okay, Goro, I teach at Newbridge Tertiary Institute in nature management. So we have a very practical approach. So we have theory and then we do practicals on our theory work, like identifying trees and grasses and all that. So I do think some programs do actually have a relationship between education and workplace, but not all of them.
Great. Others, what do you say? I see George says skills provided is okay for internships, not entrepreneurship. George, what do you mean with skills provided is okay for internships, but not entrepreneurship? Sorry, I'm George, please, yeah, type there. If you don't want to switch on your mic, it's fine. Just type there. Bain?
Cool. So I lecture graphic design and more specifically graphic design technology at Vega. So how I see it is we very much are preparing them in terms of the software and the way the trends are working. You know, we at Vega try to always be the most up to date as we can. We do a lot of looking into and a lot of research in the current trends and what's going on in the industry because it's so evolving. Every 2 minutes there's a change with graphic design in the industry. So I do think we are preparing them enough in the terms of skill sets and trying to figure out what the industry is looking for in terms of portfolios and meeting client needs. I think a barrier that I've noticed is the personal skills. You know, how people actually work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do a lot of collaboration and a lot of group work, but that's between designers, between people that are the same type. I mean, I experience it now as a freelance designer. When I have to work with corporate, it's an entirely different language and a different way that they work. So I feel like there's this little gray area where it's being addressed, yes, but not to the level where we need almost someone in a completely different area to just pop in once in a while and remind them not everyone's a designer, not everyone speaks that way or works that way or has opinions like how we do. But in terms of like the software skills and the hand-on approach, I do think we're meeting what is currently needed of the world.
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. Um, I we train people to speak their language, but we don't train people to speak the language of the business world. And I think that is exactly what George is getting at as well, saying that um, his B side was fun to go for an internship at the CSIRI, but not fine to be able to run his own company or so. I actually had a student some time ago that in his honors program he looked at biokineticists, and he's a trained biokineticist. And the fact is, a biokineticist, by definition, you're going to finish studying, you're going to go out, and very quickly you're going to start your own practice, because that's the only way you're ever going to make money. They have one short semester where all the business, anything that they're ever going to learn in business, is one of the 4 subjects that they take, and that's all they ever learn in terms of business management and running your own business. And their whole point is that they will go run their own business, but they never train to do that. Frank, I saw your hand up, and I want to come back to you because I know what you do, and I want to hear your opinion about, are we really training these people for what they're supposed to do in the world of work?
Can you hear me, Carl?
Yep, got you, Frank.
Yeah, so thanks, Carl. So yeah, hi everyone. So specifically with regards to the program that I present, which is a 1-year higher certificate in commercial photography, the program is set up very much to prepare people to be able to enter the industry at the end of the program. And this includes a whole bunch of factors such as a dedicated business module in which they learn, what is also required from them from a business angle and not just a photography aspect. And also preparing them by having them work throughout the year with real clients. So the actual clients will come and give them briefs. They will liaise with the client throughout the brief, and the client will also be involved with adjudicating the student's mark at the end of the delivery of the brief. And this goes all the way through to the moderators, the external moderators that come in. They also are then selected on the merit of being able to say the program is regularly updated, we are reflecting the latest trends in the industry, and people are truly prepared as well as one can in 1 year to prepare them to enter the industry.
You see, guys, what's interesting. Thank you, Frank.
Sure.
What's interesting, what I'm hearing, is that the practical skills thing from, and apologies, I can't recall the lady's name that spoke first, from the nature conservation, which is a practical thing, through the guys doing graphic design type of work, through to the photographers. These are all practical things. How are we preparing? And read the second bullet there. I'm not even going to speak to that because I think these 2 bullets speak very much to each other. How are we preparing, for example, a BCom student for the world of work? Are we preparing them? Are we really, or are we simply putting them through courses in economics, business management, and enterprise risk management, and what else? And we are just giving a nod, a tipping of the hat towards industry and saying, you know what, we'll bang in a work integrated learning course right in their final year, and they'll do a big assignment, never speak to industry, never do anything, and then we'll say, you know what, these guys are ready for industry. And I think for many industries or many tertiary institutions, that's true. Ermelinda?
Hi, Carl. It's Linda. You don't have to use my full name.
Yeah,
It's fine.
no, I keep forgetting that.
It's fine. So at Vega, so we do brand activation with our 2nd-year students, and brand challenges with our 3rd-year students and postgrad. And they're our students, and it comes from our BCom students, our graphic designers, I don't think our interior designers, but our digital designers, and they create mini agencies. So the 2nd years are grouped together, and they form little agencies with your BCom students, be it BCom strategic management or BCom digital marketing. And then they work on the live brief for a couple of weeks where the client briefs them, they get assessed, and they do this whole little project. But I agree what Bain was saying, we should have a little bit more of those, because the students then put into practice what they're actually doing, the theory into practice. but it's not obviously enough for all the students and all the qualifications.
Thanks, Linda. I think overall we see that there are these sparks of hope, but I'm not sure it's as widespread as we would like to see. A Stellenbosch University or UCT or Tux or one of these places. Alexandra?
Sorry, I was going to say I work at a institution that trains foundation phase teachers, and our students do a WIL program, which is 4 weeks of every year, and they study for 3 years, and then they do a research module in the 4th year, and there's a 8-week. So they're actually working in schools, and then every time they go on WIL, they start with observation, and then they get eventually to the point where they're actually leading a class over several days under the supervision of a teacher. So for us, the work integrated stuff is very, very important. It's an essential part of their training.
Alexandra, I must remember to send you one of our students on this course, her research project of 2 or 3 years ago, where she looked at how do teachers integrate into schools once they change from students into teachers. And it makes for very interesting reading, the difficulties they feel when they do that integration. But I do understand what you're saying, and I agree that education is probably one of the places where students get the most exposure to the world of work during their period of study. So I work for Varsity College, and we've also got an education guys that train for education, and I look at those students going out into schools and going to work in schools and so on, and I sometimes wish my BCom students that I work with could get that type of industry exposure and spend a couple of weeks of each year or each semester in the industry, because I think firstly I'll get a student that's much easier to work with, but secondly I'll also get a student that understands what this is about, rather than a student that believes when they leave us they know everything and they're now going to save the world, just to find out, well, actually I don't know that much. But yeah,
because
thanks.
we do 20 weeks in a 4-year degree.
Yeah,
20 weeks work
that's quite
training,
a bit, eh?
which is a lot. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a lot. 20 weeks, that's almost 6 months, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, that's a lot. Okay,
So
folks.
yeah. So your first year, I mean, my first year students have already done 2 weeks, but it's just observation. So they're just sitting in the classroom, they're not expected to interact yet because they don't really know enough yet. But they'll go back in the 4th term of this year as first year students for another 2 weeks, where there is some interaction expected with the class from them. And then they do 4 weeks in the 2nd year, 4 weeks in the 3rd year, and 8 weeks in the 4th year.
But I do think even just observing, if I can take a BCom student and I can put them into a business and I can tell them, sit down and shut up and look what's happening, that would really make a big difference in preparing them for
definitely.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I want to move on to the next slide. So having looked at that expectation, let us look at and I want you to keep that expectation in the back of your mind when we go through the challenges faced by higher education institutions, but South African society in general, because I think we shouldn't disconnect what is happening in higher education institutions and the post-school education world from what is happening in South Africa. I think those two things are crucial to each other. I think without a post-school higher education system in South Africa properly functioning, and I think we reasonably okay still, but without that, South Africa is doomed. And I think we need to understand that. So for starters, only 32% of adults has completed secondary schooling in South Africa. So immediately you're sitting with a situation where the possibility of people going into higher education is only about a third of the adult population ever has a chance to get in, because those have completed secondary schooling. And that we see in the next stats, where only 6% of adults have a degree. And that is I'm trying to remember that stat, where that came from. And I put degree there, but I can't remember if that's degree or post-school qualification. But then that sentence after that, if you have a post-school qualification, let's call it a degree, we stick to a degree, you're going to get a salary that's 6 times larger than those without a matric qualification. So the leap, and then people talks of the haves and the haves not. And in a sense, and I'm a great believer that you can't make the poor richer by taxing the rich until they're poor. But part of the problem is that our education system isn't activated, and therefore some people who are, and we can talk about privileged enough, lucky enough, whatever enough to get into post-school education and higher education institutions. Once that happens to you, you just accelerate economically into a different dimension. But only 2% of our population has a doctor's degree, a doctoral degree, not a MBCHB, but a doctoral degree. So in essence, when we look at our population, there are few people that get qualifications, but that diminishes very, very quickly when we get into the higher levels. I keep saying to my students, look, everybody's got a B degree. You guys need to do honors. Because when you look at the difference just between a 3 postgrad or post-tertiary, post-secondary degree, and you look at your honors degree, there's a massive difference. I don't think I put the stat up there, but I think it's half the people, something stupid like that. Interestingly enough, and Bain, this comes back to the point, I was going to say something and I thought, no, shut up, I'll get to it now. So higher education institutions, universities, are likely to meet the NDB enrollment target of 1.62 million by 2030. So higher education institutions, our universities, and our universities of technology are going to have the 1.62 million students that they need by 2030 to meet the National Development Plan's goals. TVET colleges are not going to meet their target. And this is a problem. To me personally, I've got a major problem with this idea. You speak to parents, and I speak to parents quite a lot. My child must get a degree. And I just think to myself, they're putting students, parents, and society for that matter, let's just not blame it just on parents. Society are forcing students into universities because you must have a degree. The fact of the matter is, you would probably do much better with some form of a technical qualification. Whether it is a skills-based qualification, like a plumber, an electrician, or something like that, or something more practical, like a photographer, for example, as we had the example earlier. The fact of the matter is, those people are, I won't say more likely, but have got a very high likelihood of making a hell of a lot of money. And I'm going to throw another spanner into the works. I want us to maybe briefly stand still around this. Some skills, graphic designers are one, and maybe even photographers are another. But I can tell you now, plumbers and electricians are not, are threatened by the whole artificial intelligence thing. BCom law students, what does a BCom law student do? Typically, they go out and they are Alexandra, it'll be interesting to see if everybody's cutting out and if it's just you. Make a comment, please, people, if I'm cutting out. BCom law students are going to do transfers of property and basic contracts, etc. AI can do this so much better. But the question that I want to ask, and I'm going to ask specifically the guys in industries that are threatened, is there something that higher education institutions can do to remove the threat of AI? And I'm not talking about the threat of AI that I have, for example, with my first year business management students handing in an assignment and they're going to put the whole assignment through AI. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about their actual livelihood once they've qualified being threatened by AI. Is there something that higher education institutions can do about this? Or is it something that we're just going to have to suck up and say certain qualifications will have to disappear because AI is just going to do it cheaper and better? What says the sorry, while you guys are thinking about how do higher education institutions combat AI, Pravin's making a very good point here. That part of the TVET college's problem in South Africa is that they're severely under-resourced. I get the impression that government doesn't understand the importance of it. Please understand, I'm not talking politics. I am critical of government. It's not a political thing. It's just I'm criticizing government as such. If you look at what has happened to TVET colleges and the way TVET colleges are treated as second-class citizens when it comes to post-school education, it's an absolute tragedy because that is where a lot of our future should be lying. And yes, it's true. Countries like Germany, Japan, they pump money into education. They technical educations happen very early on. You make that choice almost when you leave primary school, and they give you a proper grounding. But yes, let's move on to the AI idea, Alexandra.
Sorry, no, I was going to say I used to live in Argentina in South America, and there's there's one psychologist for every 6 people because university education is free and everybody's encouraged to do that. So nobody actually trains to do, those practical professions. There are no plumbers and electricians, and half the psychologists are driving taxis because they can't do anything else.
Yeah, but I'll counter that. I used to live in Ethiopia. Well, I spent a hell of a lot of time in Ethiopia. My wife lived there for about 2 or 3 years. And in Ethiopia, education is also free, but government tells you what you will study. So you apply, I want to go into tertiary education. I would prefer to do X, Y, or Z. And you can make choices. And government will turn around and say, no, you're not a suitable candidate. Goodbye. So you won't get tertiary education. Or they will say, yes, you are a suitable candidate. However, at this stage, we don't need any doctors. You can become a physiotherapist. Or, no, do you know what? We're actually looking for computer programs and programmers, and your skills from school suits computer programming. So if you want to study, we'll allow you to do computer programming. Or, no, we need some plumbers. Do you want to become a plumber or don't you want to study? And remember, they've got a command economy. For those of you that haven't done business management for quite some experience, for quite some while, command economy is communist, and they regulate their job market by simply saying, okay, so this is how we will decide how, and yeah, there are really good doctors out there, but there's some really terrible ones. So yes, it works for some, it doesn't work for others. I'm not saying for one moment we should say to students, you must study the following, you must not study the following, but yes. AI, guys, anybody want to talk about AI, or are we going to run away from that and play ostrich? Bain, go for it.
Yeah, so I know for a fact as a graphic designer, my job can absolutely easily be replaced by some person that's an admin that just puts a little prompt in on the computer and gets a poster in 2 seconds. I think the part that AI misses currently, obviously it's always evolving, it's always changing, it's always learning, is the human factor. Obviously, every single image you can think of, you can probably make an AI, but it's not people based. There's no heart, there's no soul. They all look the same. They all, like, you can see an image as AI even before you open it. I saw on LinkedIn someone posted an AI photo and we're getting absolutely shredded in the comments because they try to pass it off as their own creation. I think the way it is going now is that it's just not human. It's not what they want. But you know, it's growing, it's changing. There's new AI coming out every single day. So I think in 5 years, absolutely, my job can easily be replaced. So I just really hope that there'll either be some law or some intervention from the tech world where it'll have like some cap on it as to like the fair distribution or the fair use of art and AI and that type of thing. But that's just me in the design world. Obviously, AI can replace a lot of people's jobs where they spend years and years on theory. So that's my that's my 2 cents. I genuinely, it's ostrich. I think, yeah, I'm just gonna bury my head in the sand for as long as I can and hopefully learn some other skills.
Frank, what do you say? You're in the same type of industry?
I say we should make use of AI and we should acknowledge it as being a useful tool, but it does require, I don't want to say some kind of regulation, but definitely a kind of management. But sweeping it under the rug or being an ostrich is not going to help. AI is not going to go anywhere. It's here to stay. And I think we have a huge responsibility in education to make sure that we acknowledge that and that we make it work for us rather than against us.
I tend to agree with that point of view. I say to my students, and I've been advocating at work that when calculators came out and people started using calculators, everybody was arguing that the math is going to disappear. All calculators allowed us to do is to do a much higher level of math earlier. And we should consider AI similar to how a calculator is considered as math. You still need to understand the math. You still need to know how to get to the answers. You just have a quicker way of doing that. Frank?
So there are some analogies that one can draw on, like you did with the calculator. One of them is the cell phone. So when cell phones first came out, the majority of the working population cried out and said, we will never, ever have a cell phone. And only the younger people who saw it as quite a cool thing said, okay, I want to get a Nokia 6110 or whatever it was back then. And now most people, even your domestic worker, can't function without a cell phone. So we've integrated them into our lives, and instead of being the threat that they were perceived to be, they've become an essential tool for our everyday. And they obviously allow us to do more and more diverse things and all that. And it's quite similar with when digital cameras first came out. The massive outcry was that it would kill photography, that the art of photography would be a lost thing and everything. And well, obviously, digital photography has gone in a certain direction that way, but that's mainly blamed on the smartphone. But photography itself, it's created a huge bunch of new possibilities, which are awesome.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. I think it's something that if one embraces it and goes with it, then there are such great ways to use it. Linda, there are great ways to use AI in a responsible manner. When I do the prep for the first assignment, I will specifically address AI and the way in which I would suggest that students use AI and the way in which students shouldn't use AI. I've got very specific thoughts about that, which I'll share with you guys then. Yes, I agree, Evandri. If we look at this challenges faced, the percentage of the percentage of tertiary education students out of total enrolled students. Now, South Africa lies here about 4th from the right-hand side, which looks great, but that's like 6% of our total enrolled students are enrolled in tertiary education. But there's more bad news. So black students, let's do the race. And unfortunately, I haven't got gender in here. But let's do the race and disability stuff. So over 80% students in public universities are black. Now, if one looks at the business world, and I said right at the beginning, we need to reflect the society as tertiary education institutions. This looks great because this is even better than what business world looks like, and the participation rates of black students have increased immensely. Money's been made available, better schooling, better opportunities. We needed bridging programs have been put in place, etc., which is great. But once again, sometimes things that look great are not that great. Gross enrollment ratio sits at 20% for black students. What does that mean? Well, it sits at 49% for white students. So gross enrollment student means out of all the possible students that could be enrolled in university, what percentage are enrolled? Only 20% for black students. So although 80% of students in public universities are black, it's only 20% of the possible amount of students that could be there. Whilst for white students, it's more than double that. So there's still that discrimination, and I don't want to call it discrimination because personally I don't believe it's discrimination, as in at the pure sense of the word. It's just this hasn't balanced out yet. We haven't got enough black students coming in, and there's reasons. There's still not enough money, and that speaks to what's happening in the business world. There's still not necessarily the best education, and the opportunities are simply not there. Alexandra?
My daughter and my son-in-law run Fundamate, which is a study buddy, AI-based study buddy, which supports scholars. And they do after matric exams every year, like a survey of which kind of students got bachelor's passes. And I mean, and like Teo was telling me that they had one student who got like 1780 for everything, and then she got 6% for maths. She never had a teacher in her whole high school. So our problems there are actually the inequality around how we're distributing resources at school level.
And I will say something contentious, and I don't mind being contentious. Part of that problem is that people that can fund it. So for a long time, until 2 years ago, I stayed in a normal northern suburb of Cape Town. Up the road from me was a school. I went to the neighboring school, so I know the school very well. And I know the neighborhood because I stayed in the neighborhood. And the kids that went to that school all come from a colored community about 20 k's away, and they bust in. And I had a fundamental problem with that. Not because there were colored children going to a local school, but because those children's parents could afford to send them to this school, they took them out of the local school where they stay. The problem is the people that are left are the people that can't afford school funds and so on, which means that local school where these students have left and now come to the other school will never have the funds to employ additional teachers and so on, whilst this school away from the community will be able to and will always become a better and better and better school because there's more and more and more money. The government doesn't give schools enough money, so the school themselves must have funds to hire in teachers. It's not right. I'm not saying it's right. Yeah. But the problem is that people are migrating the children from lesser known or lesser funded schools, the moment they have money, they put them into better funded schools, and those schools are better funded by parents, which means we have almost a brain drain into the better schools. And the better schools are getting better and better and better, but the schools that are struggling more and more and more. And that's why you end up with a school where a kid never has a math teacher. And that's a tragedy, because that kid at that type of percentage for their other subjects would probably have been fine with math had somebody taught them math.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. The other side, we've dealt with the black students. The other side is students living with disabilities are even worse off. So 1% of our students have a disability, while 7.5% of the population have a disability. So there we even, it looks even worse for people with disabilities. And there is no magic bullet. We simply need to understand that this is what it is. But we need to say, how do we fix that? Then the quality of education of lecturers is problematic. Less than 50% hold PhDs. And let me tell you now, those that hold PhDs, when I look at publics, and I see this more and more in privates, those are teaching less and less and less and doing more and more research, because that's where the future lies. So you're getting a lower level of educated lecturer teaching. And then in addition, the student lecturer ratio is increasing. Even in private higher education, we're seeing that. And then the last point I want to make is that I spoke about TVET earlier, but I want to just touch on it again. Less than 11% of students at TVET level 2 in 2021 completed their qualification within the expected time frame. And I think that speaks to, somebody made the point earlier about how underfunded TVETs are. And I think that speaks to that. I hope in this discussion you've got a sense about the challenges and how challenging it is. I want to just direct you, before I take last questions and so on, want to direct you to I want to make a point. So you have got your prescribed materials, those 10 articles or whatever that I put under more resources for you. Please be aware that there's a heck of a lot more, and they call them prescribed materials, but they're not really prescribed in the sense, but they are stuff that you need to read or need to work through. So if you go into VC Learn and you go into the module guide for this section of work, you get this, which is, there's 6 there, there's 6 there, and there's a video. There's 12 additional articles, pieces of reading available to you on VC Learn. They call them prescribed. I'm not going to say they're prescribed in the sense that they are musts, but you would be doing yourself a severe disservice, and you wouldn't really be gaining the knowledge that you need for assessments and so on if you don't look at these documents as well. Should you read all of them? Yes, if you're a brilliant student, please do. But have a look at these and understand that the documents that have been given to you as prescribed materials are the core hard policies, acts, laws, government promises, etc. The meaty side of it, the what is happening in the real world side of it, lies in these documents as the ones that are on screen now. So you'll be okay from a policy perspective, but you won't be okay from a discussion perspective if you don't look at those documents as well. So please be aware, and for every learning unit and every outcome, or every learning unit, sorry, not every outcome, every learning unit, there are these additional readings that are available. Okay, folks, any further questions before we sign off? Firstly, about what we spoke about tonight. Let's start at that end of the conversation. Okay, happy days. Any general questions that you have about where we're at, about the course, about where we're going? Anything that you want to ask me or tell me about? Thanks, Frank. Anything? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thanks, guys. A really great class. This is what happens when we have a bunch of people. I see we had 19. I think a couple of people came in and went out. This is what happens when we've got a bunch of people and people attend and participate. Alexandra, go.
I was going to ask a question, but then you closed questions, and it just took a while.
Ask
Okay. I was curious about what you said when we met with you the first time about using AI in assignments, and that there's a requirement to put a link in your references to the actual chat with AI that you had.
Yes.
Is there a kind of document or a framework that can be used as a guideline for that?
I will share that with you when we talk about the assignment.
Okay.
Basically what it boils down to is if you're going to use AI, I don't want to get into the AI discussion now, but basically if you're going to use AI, you need to tell me, I used this AI to do this with, this is what I asked it, and here's the link to the conversation with them.
Yes.
So,
I'm asking for work reasons, not for. I understood what you meant for the course,
cool.
but I've
do
got
me a favor.
students, and I want to set some guidelines down.
Okay.
So I was just curious.
Drop me an email.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you so much.
And I'll send you a document that we've used on our campus. With all kinds of disclaimers that you're not allowed to use it in that format, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
But from that, you'll get the idea and the gist of the matter. Okay.
No, it's just that I've run into an issue at work, and you are the only person that I've heard say that. So I kind of wanted to get a sense of where that comes from.
Yeah, the people run away from it, but drop me an email. Drop me an email.
I'll do that. Thank you so much.
I'll be behind my computer tomorrow, so I'll probably be able to respond. And then if you want to chat about it, we can chat, and I can also put you in contact with other people to chat to.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay. Cool, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening. Cheers. Okay, I'm ending the recording there. Thanks, guys, to those of you that haven't been able to attend. I hope you enjoyed listening to the recording. And once again, please join us next time. You see what lovely discussions we can have if we're a group of people together, and we can learn from each other. Great stuff. Thanks, guys. Good evening.